When the marriage rumors first exploded across social media, no one expected them to reach this level. Not the fans, not the media, and definitely not the staff who were standing backstage that night, frozen in silence, watching two of the biggest stars in the industry tear into each other like strangers. Taehyung was the first to speak. Are you seriously just going to stand there and pretend nothing happened? His voice cut through the dressing room like shattered glass, sharp, controlled, but trembling underneath. The makeup lights reflected in the mirror, and that was where Jungkook saw him, not directly but through their reflection. Taehyung's eyes were dark, jaw tight, shoulders tense like he'd been holding this in for hours. Jungkook froze mid-step, one hand still hovering near the table cluttered with makeup brushes and half-empty water bottles. His chest rose and fell too quickly. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The room felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy. Around them, stylists stopped moving. A manager slowly lowered his phone. Someone dropped a comb, and the sound echoed louder than it should have. One staff member quietly slipped out of the room, sensing what was about to unfold. You knew exactly what people would think, Taehyung continued, stepping closer. You knew the timing was bad, so why didn't you tell me before you agreed to that interview? Jungkook finally turned to face him. His expression was unreadable, almost eerily calm, the kind of calm that only appears right before something breaks. It was scripted, he said quietly. I didn't control the question. Taehyung let out a short, bitter laugh. You smiled, he said. You paused. You looked straight into the camera like it meant something. Jungkook flinched. And then you said it, Taehyung added, his voice dropping lower. You said, who knows, maybe I'll be married soon. Behind them, a stylist reached for a hairdryer, then slowly unplugged it, as if any noise might make things worse. A manager mouthed the words, get them out, to a production assistant, but the assistant only shook their head. No one dared to intervene. Jungkook took a step forward, his fists tightening at his sides. You think I meant that? He asked. You think I said it to hurt you? Taehyung didn't hesitate. I think you didn't think about me at all. The words landed harder than any shout. We've spent years being careful, Taehyung continued, his voice cracking not from weakness but from exhaustion. Every word, every glance, every interaction, always calculated. And suddenly you're playing into rumors like that. Do you even know what that did to me? Jungkook looked away for a second. When he looked back, his jaw trembled slightly. It was a joke, T, a throwaway line. I didn't know it would blow up. Then why did you hide your phone after? Taehyung shot back. Why did you avoid me for 2 days? You always get ahead of rumors, always, but this time you disappeared. Silence swallowed the room. Jungkook looked like he'd been physically struck. I wasn't avoiding you, he said slowly. I just didn't know how to explain it without making it worse. So you thought ignoring it would help, Taehyung replied, his voice now calm but dangerous. You thought I'd just move on. Jungkook opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes searched Taehyung's face, as if looking for something that wasn't there anymore. The door creaked open slightly. A staff member peeked in, saw the tension, and immediately closed it again. Word was already spreading. Whispers down the hallway, messages in group chats, speculation from people who had only caught fragments of the argument. Inside the room, Taehyung finally exhaled, a long, shaky breath. You and I both know we can't afford mistakes like this, he said. Not now, not ever. Jungkook stepped closer. So what? We stop talking. We pretend nothing happened. Taehyung turned toward the mirror. Their reflections stood side by side, too close to be strangers, too distant to be anything else. No, he said quietly. We stop pretending we're okay when we're not. Then he walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click, but it felt louder than the argument itself. Jungkook stood there, alone, staring at his own reflection. A stylist tried to approach him, then stopped, sensing that any words would only bounce off the wall of regret surrounding him. He muttered a soft apology to no one in particular and turned sharply toward the emergency stairs. 30 minutes later, both of them were called for a private filming session, a behind-the-scenes segment, just the two of them, one camera, no script. The irony burned. When they entered the minimalistic studio space, the tension returned instantly. The room was dim, intimate, designed for vulnerability, not conflict. The director signaled from behind the curtain. Rolling in 3, 2. The red light blinked on. Taehyung stared straight ahead, fingers fidgeting with the edge of his blazer. Jungkook glanced at him, then looked away. Seconds passed. "They want us to talk about the rumor," Jungkook said finally. "Do you want to start or should I?" Taehyung let out a soft, stunned laugh. "You mean the one you fed?" Jungkook didn't fight back. "It wasn't intentional. You know I don't control what clips go viral." "But you do control your words," Taehyung snapped. "And you knew the timing. You knew I was already getting heat for not addressing anything. Then you go and say you might be getting married soon." Jungkook rubbed his temple. "You think I wanted this? I thought being vague would help." "Being vague," Taehyung repeated. "You gave them a headline and then vanished." Jungkook finally raised his voice, not angry, just tired. "Do you know how many times I've had to act like we're just coworkers? Like you don't mean more to me than all of this?" The words hung in the air. Even the camera seemed to hesitate. Taehyung looked away. "That's not the point, isn't it?" Jungkook asked softly. "We've been dancing around this for years." Taehyung's voice lowered. "Because I was scared. Because I didn't know if I was the only one taking the consequences seriously." "You're not," Jungkook said, his voice shaking. "I just didn't know how to handle it without hurting you." "But you did hurt me," Taehyung replied. "Not by what you said, by what you didn't say after." From behind the curtain, the director signaled they were running out of time. Jungkook exhaled. "Then tell me what to do now." Taehyung looked into his eyes for the first time since the fight. "Don't fix it like a project," he said. "Face it like a person with me." Jungkook nodded. "Okay." The director stepped in and called cut. But neither of them moved. They stood there, not healed, not broken, just no longer pretending. And neither of them realized, yet, that someone in the building had already started whispering. The next morning, the air inside the company's private lounge felt different. Not loud, not chaotic, just heavy in a way that made every movement feel slower than usual. Conversations between staff were quieter. Phones were checked more often. Even the most experienced managers avoided eye contact with each other, as if everyone already knew something had shifted, but no one wanted to be the first to say it out loud. Taehyung stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed, staring at the city skyline without really seeing it. The glass reflected his face, calm on the surface, but his jaw was tense, teeth lightly pressed together like he was holding back words that refused to settle. Behind him, the door opened softly. Jungkook walked in carrying 2 paper coffee cups. "You didn't eat," he said, placing one on the table beside Taehyung. Taehyung didn't turn around, but his shoulders moved slightly, acknowledging the gesture. "That footage from yesterday," he said quietly. "It's not going to air, right?" "They're cutting most of it," Jungkook replied. "They'll keep the ending, the softer part." Taehyung finally turned, the light outlining the tiredness in his eyes. "Do you think it was a mistake," he asked, "saying all that on camera?" Jungkook shook his head slowly. "No, I think it was honest, and scary but real." For a moment the silence between them felt different than before, not hostile, just fragile. Then Taehyung stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly. "Then explain this." He held out his phone. The screen displayed a trending post from a popular entertainment blog. The headline was bold, already gaining traction. Jungkook indirectly confirms romantic tension with Taehyung. Below it were screenshots from the interview room, blurry, grainy, clearly taken without permission. Jungkook's face drained of color. "How did they get this?" he asked. "The footage hasn't aired." "Which means someone leaked it." Taehyung said, "Someone in the building." Jungkook sat down heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "I swear I didn't tell anyone, not even my manager." "Neither did I," Taehyung replied. "But now it's out there, again, twisted into something we never intended." Jungkook looked up at him. "Is it twisted, though?" Taehyung froze. "Or did they just see what we've been trying to hide?" Taehyung's voice dropped. "Don't put that on me." "I'm not blaming you," Jungkook said quickly. "I'm just saying maybe we're both tired of pretending." "It's not about being tired," Taehyung snapped. "It's about being smart. We've spent years protecting our careers, our team, our sanity. One emotional moment almost undid all of that." Jungkook looked down. "So what do we do now?" Taehyung hesitated. "Maybe we talk to the company, get ahead of it, control the narrative before it controls us again." Jungkook's eyes widened slightly. "You mean face it publicly?" Taehyung nodded. "If we don't, we'll keep living in fear of every headline." A knock interrupted them. Their manager poked his head in, expression unreadable. "PR and legal want to see you, 12th floor now." The conference room was cold, not in temperature but in atmosphere. Phones buzzed on the table, laptops were open, files stacked neatly like silent accusations. The head of PR adjusted her glasses. "There's been a breach," she said. "We're investigating, but you need to know this story is escalating. Major outlets are already requesting comments." "What kind of comments?" Taehyung asked. "Nothing explicit," she replied, "but suggestive, emotional tension, rumors of a falling out or something more." "We didn't authorize anything," Jungkook said. "We know," the legal advisor replied, "but we need a united front. Either deny everything completely or release a calm, controlled statement." The room went quiet. Then Taehyung leaned forward. "What if we didn't deny it entirely?" Everyone looked up. "What do you mean?" the PR head asked. "I mean we acknowledge that we're close," Taehyung said carefully. "Closer than most colleagues. That sometimes that closeness creates complicated moments, but we're committed to supporting each other professionally." Jungkook nodded. "That's not denial," he said. "That's honesty." The PR head paused, then slowly nodded. "If you both say that together, we can draft something tonight." "Same wording," Taehyung added, "same timing." "No room for misinterpretation," Jungkook finished. The agreement was made. But as they left the room, Jungkook gently touched Taehyung's shoulder. "That was brave." Taehyung gave a tired smile. "No, it was necessary." The next day, their synchronized posts went live. Fans flooded the comments, some relieved, some suspicious, some reading between every line. But the most surprising reaction came from the industry itself. A well-known entertainment reporter tweeted a single sentence. "Sometimes coordinated honesty is louder than any denial." Within an hour, their manager called. "There's a follow-up interview request," he said. "A major outlet, not gossip, a legacy piece about your dynamic." Taehyung glanced at Jungkook. "What do you think?" he asked. Jungkook shrugged. "Part of me wants to do it, set the tone ourselves. And the other part wonders if we're making it worse by not letting it fade." Taehyung exhaled slowly. "Then maybe we do it, but on our terms." They chose the interviewer themselves, a journalist known for being respectful, for listening more than provoking. The interview was set in a quiet art gallery, soft lighting, minimal cameras. The first question was gentle. How are you feeling sitting here together today? Jungkook answered first. Tired but grounded. Taehyung nodded. And relieved. Whatever was building between us needed light. Do you think the public has a right to know what that connection is? The interviewer asked. Jungkook glanced at Taehyung. Only if we're the ones telling it. And even then, Taehyung added, some things aren't meant to be labeled. The interviewer smiled softly. What is it about each other that you fought so hard to protect? Taehyung answered without hesitation. His kindness. People think Jungkook is just strong, composed, polished, but he feels everything deeply, and I couldn't let the world turn that into something shallow. Jungkook swallowed before responding. Taehyung sees through noise. In a world obsessed with image, he listens. That kind of attention is rare. The room was quiet. Not awkward. Just real. And somewhere behind a glass wall, someone was already watching. Already thinking about how this story could go further. The article was published 2 days later. Not with a screaming headline, not with scandal or confession, but with a title so soft it almost felt deliberate. Unspoken bonds, inside the creative trust between Taehyung and Jungkook. The cover image was in grayscale, Taehyung looking forward, calm but distant. Jungkook glancing sideways, caught in a moment that felt too private to be staged. The piece itself didn't accuse, it didn't speculate aggressively, it whispered. It talked about artistic chemistry, about emotional alignment, about how two people could grow so close under pressure that the line between professional and personal blurred in ways even they didn't fully understand. Within minutes, it went viral. I knew it, one trending post read. There's something between them and it's beautiful. Another said, this isn't drama, this is real. But while fans reacted with admiration and theories, not everyone inside the industry was celebrating. That afternoon, Taehyung and Jungkook were summoned again, not to PR, not to legal. To the board. The conference room was different this time. Larger, polished table, closed blinds, faces they barely recognized. An executive cleared his throat. We want to begin by acknowledging the success of the article, he said calmly. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. Taehyung sat straighter. However, the man continued, we're concerned about long-term implications, public interpretation, brand alignment. You mean people wondering what our relationship is, Taehyung said. We mean lines getting blurred, another board member replied. Between narrative and reality, between professionalism and personal emotion. Jungkook's expression tightened. With respect, he said, we weren't unprofessional, we told the truth carefully. But the public doesn't separate those things, the first executive said, and some stakeholders are requesting clarity. Clarity about what? Taehyung asked quietly. Whether we're allowed to have emotions, Jungkook thought but didn't say. The room softened slightly. We're not trying to silence you, the executive added. We're asking how you want to manage this moving forward. Do you address it again, or steer away? Jungkook looked at Taehyung. Taehyung answered slowly. We steer it, not avoid it, not escalate it, just guide it with honesty. The board nodded. The meeting ended without threats, but the message was clear. This story was no longer just theirs. Outside, in the empty parking structure, the echo of their footsteps felt louder than the city above. Did you hear that? Taehyung said. It's not just our story anymore. Jungkook let out a quiet laugh. Was it ever? Taehyung's eyes flashed. That's the problem. We let other people own too much of us, our feelings, our silence. So what do we do? Jungkook asked. Taehyung didn't answer right away. That night, Taehyung received a call from someone he hadn't spoken to in over a year. Their former performance director, retired, calm voice, always honest. I saw the interview, the man said. You know, when you were younger, you both worried about being too emotional on stage. You were afraid people would misread it. Taehyung smiled faintly. And that emotion is why people believed you. Don't let fear of being seen steal that from you. Taehyung didn't realize how much he needed those words until he hung up. Across town, Jungkook sat alone in his personal studio, replaying the interview on mute, watching his own face when Taehyung spoke about him. It wasn't pride or embarrassment. It was recognition. Someone had known him that deeply and still stayed. His phone buzzed. A message from Taehyung. A photo from years ago. Both of them collapsed on the rehearsal floor, laughing after messing up choreography. No caption. Jungkook typed back. We should talk more like that. Taehyung replied almost instantly. No cameras, just us. 15 minutes later, they were on Taehyung's rooftop, jackets pulled tight against the cold, city lights blinking below. Do you regret anything? Jungkook asked. Taehyung stared into the distance. Only that we waited so long to stop hiding. Jungkook nodded. Me too. They didn't speak again for a while, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt chosen. The next morning, reality returned. The rehearsal studio was buzzing, members stretching, staff laughing, music blasting. And yet every few seconds, eyes flicked toward Taehyung and Jungkook. They stood on opposite sides of the room, civil, focused, professional. But something underneath hadn't settled. During break, Jungkook approached him quietly. Can we talk? They slipped into the back hallway, emergency light, muffled bass from the studio. I feel like we're stuck, Jungkook said. Like we're saying the right things publicly but not dealing with what still hurts. Taehyung crossed his arms, not defensive, just bracing. Then say it. Jungkook hesitated. When you said you regretted hiding things, did you mean everything? Taehyung frowned. What do you think I meant? I don't know, Jungkook admitted. Sometimes I wonder if you wish none of this ever happened, the closeness, the rumors. Taehyung's voice sharpened. Do you? No, never. Then why doubt me? Jungkook looked down. Because you shut down after the board meeting. You were distant. I thought maybe you had second thoughts. Taehyung exhaled, exhaustion finally breaking through. I'm terrified, Jungkook. Every word we say now is dissected. One wrong move and we drag everyone down. Jungkook stepped closer. That doesn't mean you regret telling the truth. No, Taehyung said softly. It means I'm scared of losing control. A long pause. Then let me help carry it, Jungkook said. Not just on camera, in moments like this too. Taehyung's gaze softened. You already do. Their manager's voice echoed down the hall. 5 minutes, guys. As they walked back, their pace matched without thinking. Mid-dance, during a routine that required perfect synchronization, they caught each other's eyes in the mirror. No tension. Just alignment. That night, they were back on the rooftop again. Jungkook showed Taehyung a message. The writer from the article says a documentary platform wants to talk about emotional growth, the stuff people never see. Taehyung raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. Also real, Jungkook said. Taehyung stared at the stars. Then only if we have control. And only if we're both ready. They shook on it without smiling. Neither of them noticed the quiet shift happening around them. Sponsors asking questions. Staff whispering more carefully. Executive suggesting separate appearances. The world was adjusting to their honesty. And not everyone liked it. The next few days passed with an uneasy calm. On the surface, everything looked normal. Rehearsals continued. Content shoots were scheduled. Meetings filled their calendars like always. Taehyung and Jungkook showed up on time, smiled when required, performed with the same precision the public expected. But something underneath had shifted. Staff spoke more quietly when they entered a room. Managers exchanged looks instead of words. Even the most casual interactions felt measured, as if everyone was suddenly afraid of saying the wrong thing. One evening, their creative director pulled them aside in the green room. "Just so you know," she said, lowering her voice, "some of the higher-ups are getting nervous." Taehyung frowned. "About what?" "They're suggesting temporary distance, separate interviews, fewer joint appearances." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "So after everything, they want us to pretend again." "They'll say it's for your image," she replied gently, "but you know what it's really about. Control." That night, Taehyung and Jungkook met at Taehyung's apartment. The TV played an old commercial on mute, one where they stood side by side, laughing like nothing in the world could touch them. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "You think this is going to keep happening?" Taehyung asked. "Probably," Jungkook said. "Every time we move forward, someone pulls us back." Taehyung sighed. "We've worked too hard to risk everything for a narrative they can twist." "Then we take the narrative back," Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung looked at him. "How?" "I've been thinking about that documentary offer," Jungkook continued. "What if we don't wait for approval? What if we film our own version?" Taehyung stared at him. "You're serious?" "Raw, no producers, no edits, just us." "And release it without telling them?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook gave a small smile. "They won't have to know until it's done." Taehyung laughed under his breath. "That's the most rebellious thing you've said in years." The next morning, they met at Jungkook's personal studio, early enough that no one else would be there. The room was softly lit, filled with instruments and scattered notebooks. They set up the cameras themselves. No crew, no lights, just 2 chairs and a quiet space. When the red light turned on, neither of them spoke at first. Taehyung finally broke the silence. "We're not here to confess anything dramatic," he said, looking straight into the lens. "We're here because we're tired of being translated by other people." "This isn't about rumors," Jungkook added. "It's about what it feels like to live under a microscope and still try to protect something personal." They talked for nearly 2 hours. About fear, about pressure, about how being close in public had turned into something they had to manage like a crisis. Taehyung admitted he'd lost sleep worrying every gesture would be misread. Jungkook confessed he once considered stepping back from projects just to protect Taehyung from headlines. There were no tears, just heavy honesty. "If we've ever meant anything to you," Taehyung said near the end, "not as headlines but as people, then let this speak for itself." They didn't post it. Not yet. They backed it up, encrypted it, agreed to wait until the timing felt right. But something had changed. That evening as they packed up, Jungkook paused at the door. "You know what the real problem is," he said. "We spent so long trying to protect our bond that we forgot it was strong enough to protect itself." Taehyung nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what we show people next, not fear, faith." Outside, the night was cold, but neither of them rushed. They walked side by side down the street. No disguises, no shadows, just 2 people learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let the world see you as you are. It started with a phone call. Jungkook had just finished recording harmonies when his manager's name flashed across the screen. "You need to come to the main building now," the voice said. "It's urgent." At the same time, Taehyung received the same call. No details, just instructions. When they arrived, they were led into a small conference room. 2 senior managers, 1 legal advisor, a tablet sat on the table. The screen displayed a news article. "Behind the scenes with BTS, Secret video project sparks internal turmoil. Below it was a blurry screenshot of Taehyung and Jungkook sitting in what looked like a recording studio. Jungkook's hands clenched. "Who leaked this?" "We're investigating," the advisor replied, "but someone clearly knew about the footage." "We didn't share it," Taehyung said, "not with anyone." "That may be true," one manager said, "but the existence of it is now public." Jungkook exhaled sharply. "So now what? Are we in trouble for talking to a camera in our own space?" "No," the advisor said carefully, "but you need to respond. The board doesn't want this to look like a rebellion." "This wasn't about rebellion," Jungkook said firmly. "It was about breathing." "Then say that," the manager replied, "publicly together." That night the dorm felt tense. The other members were kind but distant, unsure how to step into something they didn't fully understand. Taehyung and Jungkook sat on the balcony. "We were careful," Taehyung said. "We didn't even tell our closest friends." "And yet someone still made it a headline," Jungkook replied. "Do you regret filming it?" Taehyung asked. "Not for a second," Jungkook said, "but I hate that now it looks like we were hiding something shady." Taehyung was quiet, then said, "Maybe it's time we stop reacting and start leading." Jungkook looked at him. "You want to post it?" "Not all of it," Taehyung said. "Just a moment, no caption, let people feel it before they judge it." The next morning, they posted a 58-second clip. No music, no filters. Taehyung speaking softly about fear and responsibility. Jungkook listening, nodding without interrupting. The response was instant. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, calling it brave, grounding, real. But not everyone was impressed. A well-known talk show host criticized the move, calling it dangerous branding. Some reporters speculated about internal conflict. That evening, during a team dinner, their producer pulled them aside. "You're risking everything we built," he said. "This project was supposed to be about unity." "We didn't ask for the spotlight," Taehyung replied calmly. "We asked for space to be real." "And in doing that, you made people uncomfortable," the producer said. "Sometimes honesty feels like betrayal when it breaks patterns," Jungkook replied. "Then maybe the pattern is the problem." Back at the dorm, Taehyung sat in silence. "Do you think we've gone too far?" he asked. Jungkook shook his head. "No, I think we've just gone far enough to scare the people who were comfortable controlling us." Taehyung smiled faintly. "That scares me too." "Me too," Jungkook admitted. "But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe and silent." They didn't know what would come next. The fallout didn't come all at once. It arrived in fragments: a delayed email, a canceled appearance, a polite but firm message from a sponsor asking to reassess alignment. On paper, nothing dramatic had happened. In reality, everything had. Taehyung noticed it first during a wardrobe fitting. The stylist avoided eye contact, hands moving too carefully, like she was afraid to say the wrong thing. "Is something wrong?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "People are talking," she admitted. "Not badly, just differently." "About what?" "About you and Jungkook. About whether you're becoming unpredictable." Taehyung nodded slowly. Unpredictable. The word stayed with him longer than it should have. That evening, Jungkook found him in the practice room long after everyone else had left. The lights were dim. Music played softly, a looped instrumental they used to warm up to years ago. "You're still here?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung didn't turn. "I needed to move. If I stop, I start thinking too much." Jungkook sat on the floor beside him. "About what?" "About whether we're actually doing the right thing, or just burning bridges we don't know how to rebuild." Jungkook leaned back against the mirror. "Do you remember our debut year?" he asked. "How everyone said we were too honest on camera, too emotional." Taehyung smiled faintly. They said we needed to be more mysterious. And now they're saying we're too real again, Jungkook said. It's the same fear, just older. Taehyung finally looked at him. What if this time the consequences are bigger? Jungkook met his gaze. Then we face them, together like always. The next day, a private meeting was scheduled with upper management. No board this time, just 3 executives and their managers. The tone was calm, but the message was sharp. We're concerned about the direction you're taking, one executive said. Not personally, strategically. Strategically honest, Jungkook replied. Strategically risky, another corrected. The brand relies on stability, predictability, emotional narratives that are controlled. Taehyung folded his hands. So you want us to feel things, but only when it's convenient. The room went quiet. The first executive sighed. We want you to succeed long-term. That requires restraint. Jungkook spoke before Taehyung could. We've practiced restraint for over a decade. And now, the executive asked. Now we're practicing truth, Jungkook said calmly. They weren't punished, but they weren't supported either. The meeting ended with no resolution, only a subtle shift in priorities. More solo schedules. Fewer joint projects. Less time in the same frame. The separation wasn't announced. It was engineered. Taehyung felt it during their next public event. They were seated apart, different interview slots, separate cars. Fans noticed immediately. So this is how it starts, Taehyung said quietly in the backstage hallway. Jungkook clenched his jaw. They think distance will cool things down. Will it? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked at him. No, it just makes the silence louder. That night, Taehyung couldn't sleep. He scrolled through old photos, behind-the-scenes clips, moments when none of this existed yet, when they were just 2 people trying to survive the same dream. He typed a message. Do you ever feel like they're slowly editing us out of our own story? Jungkook replied almost immediately. Yes, but they can't edit what we actually lived. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A junior staff member posted a candid photo from years ago, Taehyung asleep on Jungkook's shoulder during a flight, both exhausted, both unaware. The caption was simple. Some bonds don't fade just because they stop being visible. It went viral in under an hour. This story exists entirely as a work of imagination. Everything you have read so far, and everything that will follow after this point, is fictional and created solely for narrative exploration and emotional storytelling. It is not a report, not a biography, not a reconstruction of real events, and not a representation of the real lives, thoughts, relationships, or experiences of any person. The characters, dialogues, situations, conflicts, emotions, and developments are invented for the purpose of fiction, and they do not claim to describe reality, reveal hidden truths, or reflect actual circumstances in the world beyond this narrative space. Some elements in this story may appear familiar, and some characters may feel loosely inspired by public figures or recognizable names, but these similarities are purely coincidental and symbolic. They are used as narrative tools, not as portrayals of real individuals. The personalities, decisions, emotional dynamics, and events within this story are not meant to correspond to any real person's identity, history, or private life. No scene should be interpreted as evidence, information, or insight into the real world. This story does not assert facts, does not confirm rumors, and does not intend to influence how any person is perceived outside the boundaries of fiction. This narrative invites readers to engage with themes such as pressure, vulnerability, intimacy, conflict, and personal growth in a symbolic way. It uses imagined circumstances to explore how human emotions might unfold under extreme attention and expectation. The emotional intensity, the dramatic tension, and the interpersonal struggles are crafted for storytelling purposes only. They are designed to evoke reflection, not to replace reality or suggest that such situations are happening beyond the page. Readers are encouraged to approach this story with ethical awareness and critical thinking. It should not be shared, quoted, or interpreted as factual material, insider knowledge, or a hidden account of real events. It should not be used to fuel speculation, gossip, defamation, or assumptions about any real individual or group. Fiction can be powerful, and that power comes with responsibility. Consuming it thoughtfully means recognizing its boundaries and respecting the difference between narrative imagination and real human lives. This story is not meant to persuade, expose, accuse, or document. It exists to create an emotional experience, to explore ideas through metaphor, and to offer a space where complex feelings can be examined without claiming ownership over reality. Any emotional resonance that feels authentic is a reflection of universal human themes, not a mirror of specific people or situations. By continuing to read, you are stepping into a fictional world that operates under its own rules, its own logic, and its own emotional truths. These truths belong only to the story itself. They are not statements about the world, but artistic constructions meant to be felt, interpreted, and then left within the realm of imagination. With that understanding, the narrative now continues as fiction, and only as fiction.